What is up guys, Prashun here from Full Stack Simplified, and I'm here to share some amazing contents related to full stack. If that sounds interesting, don't forget to subscribe this channel for more videos like this. In late 2019, React team released an experimental feature for data fetching using Suspense, which is still in experimental state and is not recommended for apps in production. But we are going to have a quick look on how things work and how to use this feature in our code. So without any further ado, let's get started. Here I have a simple React functional component which is fetching some data from this API. Basically, I have set up a use effect block here so that we fetch the data only when the component is mounted for the first time. So basically, we are fetching a random color data from this random color API, and when the data is received, we are basically updating this color data state, and we are also maintaining a is loading state in order to keep track if the data has been loaded or is still loading. So if we quickly go to our web browser, we can see that every time we reload this page, we are getting a random color name, and also we can see that we are getting a loading tag which is very fast. Let me just switch to slow 3G, and you can see till the data is not loaded, we are seeing this simple loading text here, and when the data is loaded, we are simply replacing it with the color name. So basically, this is the traditional and recommended way of fetching data in React till the date of the recording of this video. React in future may announce a stable and production ready release for this feature of Suspense for data fetching in their upcoming React 18 releases. If we have a quick look into the official documentation, and the link to this will be in the description, we can see that Suspense was added in React version 16.6 and above. And this basically helps any component to wait for some code to load before it can render anything on screen. And most commonly, we have been using Suspense with React Lazy to load components when it's needed, or sometimes also based on routes. But now we can also use Suspense for data fetching in our React components. For this, we need to install the experimental versions of React and React DOM. For that, simply go to your VS Code and in your terminal, simply type npm install react at experimental and react dom at experimental. And here I'm also using this force flag because I was getting some issues when I was installing these packages, but obviously you can try installing these packages without using this flag, and then press enter, and let's wait for the packages to get installed. As the package has been already installed, the next step is to enable the concurrency mode in your React project. For that, simply go to index.js file, and instead of rendering your DOM in this traditional way, we are going to say react dom dot create root, and here we are going to pass this root element, the root div which we have, and on this function I'm going to call render method, and here we are going to pass our app component. And the next step is to obviously delete all these lines of codes, and that's it. The next thing which we need to do is start fetching some data from this random color API, and for that I'm going to create a api.js file, and here I'm going to simply create a function named fetch color. And what this function is going to do is it's simply going to return the promise from the fetch API. So we want to say return, and I'll quickly go to app.js file, and I'll just simply grab this part of this code and simply paste it here. And it is going to return the promise which we are getting from this fetch block. But here we need to change this set color data, and here I'm simply going to return the response. So in the next step, what we need to do is map this promise with how this Suspense API works. For this, I'm simply going to create a wrap promise function which is going to accept a promise as its parameter. And inside this function, I'm going to create a simple status variable which is going to keep track of our promise, whether it is loading or is completed or has an error. And initially, I'm going to assign a pending value to this variable. The next variable we are going to have is result, which will be undefined by default. And then we are going to create a variable named suspender, which will be equals to our promise. And we are going to say promise.then, And here we have two cases, either the promise resolves or it fails. So if it resolves, we are going to have a result variable, a result object, and I'm going to say status is equals to success, and I'm going to assign the result variable as our res. Alternatively, if we have an error, I'm going to say our status will be equals to error, and our result will be equals to this error object. The next thing which we are going to do is return a function called read, and this read function is basically going to keep track of our promise. And in this read function, we are going to say if status is pending, we are going to throw the promise. The React expects us to throw this promise. So we're going to throw this suspender. Now else if, we are going to say else if status is equals to error, we are going to again throw the error which we have already stored in our result variable. So we are going to say throw result. And finally, if the status is successful, so we are going to simply return the result. Now the cool thing about this is you don't need to write this wrap promise function every now and then. Once you have already created it, you can use it with multiple APIs for fetching or posting data. Now this wrap promise function which we have created, we are going to call this over our fetch color function. So as I'm simply going to say export const fetch color data, and this function is simply going to return an object with our color resource, which will be equals to our wrap promise, and here we are going to pass our fetch color function. So basically this fetch color function is going to return a promise. So this promise we are wrapping with this wrap promise function, and we make sure it fits the Suspense API. So for the next step, I'm simply going to the app component, and here I'm going to remove these lines of code and also these two lines of code. And instead of importing useEffect and useState, I'm simply going to import Suspense from React, and I'm also going to import the fetch color data function which we have created in our api.js file. Now I'm simply going to create a variable named resource, which will be equals to our fetch color data function. So always remember to call this fetch color data function outside your component and not inside your component body. So now I'm going to create a simple color details component, and I'm going to do this in the same file. Obviously you can do this in a separate file and import that component into the app component. But here, to make things easy, I'm simply going to create this color details component in the same. So basically this color details component is a very simple component having a div which shows the background color of the color which we are getting, and also has a h1 tag to show the color name. So the next thing which we are going to do is create a variable named color, which is going to be equals to resource which we have created above, and on resource we are going to say color dot read. So this is going to return the color data, and it is going to be stored in this color variable. So for the background color, I'm going to say color dot hex value, and for the color name I'm going to say color dot color underscore name. And now we need to call this color details component in our main app component. So for that, first I'm going to use this suspense, and inside the suspense component I'm simply going to call this color details component. That's it. And for suspense we also need to provide a fallback UI, which in my case will be a simple h1 tag showing the loading text, and that's it. So now if we quickly go to a web browser, we can see that every time we reload this page, we are getting a random color and a random color name. And also you can see the loading text, which is very fast. So let me go to the dev tools, and in the network tabs, I'm simply going to say slow 3G so that you can see that loading text. So as you can see, if I reload this page, we are going to see that loading text first, and when the data is fetched, then we are going to see the color name and the color. So basically, if the data is still loading, it is going to throw a promise which is going to be caught by this suspense component here, and it is going to display the fallback UI, which in our case is a simple loading text. Instead of that, you can have a spinner or a loader or anything you want. Once the promise is resolved or completed, React is going to render our color details component with the data fetched from the API. And the cool thing about this, that it is not necessary to have this suspense exactly above our component. Basically, you can have this suspense component anywhere higher in your component tree. So essentially, this feature is pretty cool and it cleans a lot of code in our component. And it also provides a better and cleaner data fetching mechanism with a fallback UI using Suspense. So that's all for this video, guys. I have left the GitHub link for this code and have also listed all the resources and their links in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe for more contents like this.